I look at this problem, when we go through our graphing, we have a list of information we have to find, and I told you I would give you that list. I'll tell you what you need to find for me. First thing I want is the x-intercept. That's where the graph hits the x-axis. How do we find that? When y is equal to 0. And you can work it out from the whole thing. But I've also said every time we're just going to multiply over the bottom, so it's really just when the top is 0. So that is -1. X-intercept, that's a point. So I hit my x-axis at -1. We put a point there. Y-intercept is where we hit the y-axis. So that is when x is 0. If I put in 0 for all my x's, 0 plus 1 is 1. Over 0 times 0 plus 4 is 4. What's 1 over 0? You have none. You can't divide by 0, right? You have 0 on the bottom. So we don't hit the y-axis. Vertical asymptotes. Asymptotes are lines. You have to give me the full equation, and those are the ones that are dashed on your graph. So to find the vertical, what do? So if I want to figure out what makes the bottom 0, there's two of them. X can equal 0, or x can equal -4. You have to give me the x equals on that, or I will count off. So those are where I put my vertical dashed line. Okay. Horizontal or oblique. To decide that, all we really have to do is divide the highest powers of x. This one is factored, so I have to think about if I multiplied it out. So the top is x. The bottom, if you multiply it out, you would get an x squared. When you do x divided by x squared, you end with x on the bottom. What did I tell you? If x is on the bottom, what's your asymptote? It's 0, because you can't divide them. So it's horizontal y equals 0. So all you really have to do is look at those highest powers of x. If it's the same power, you're going to get a horizontal at a number. If the top is one bigger, when you have an x on top, that's when we had the oblique and we had to do long division. So y equals 0 is right here. Okay, I had two vertical asymptotes. So that basically took my graph and chopped it twice. So I need 3 parts to my graph. To figure out these parts, we have to plug in some test points. So this one, I need something smaller than -4. So if I put in a -5. Okay, you can use a calculator to plug these in. You don't have to show me a lot of work. -5 plus 1 is -4 over -5 times -1. And we get -4/5. All I really care about is that it's negative. I mean, you can try to plot it exactly, but that fact that it is less than 0 tells me this section is below my asymptote. And we know these are just curves approaching our asymptotes. So we have that section. This section, all we really know right now is that we're going to cross the asymptote right here. We could look, we got that -1 from the top. Did it have a multiplicity of 2 or anything? So we know it's not going to bounce, it's going to go through. So it's 2 options. It can either go up like this or down like this. So plug in a point to see. If we put in -2. -2 plus 1 is -1 over -2 times 2. So we get a positive 1/4. So -2 is a positive. And I know it's not bouncing because the multiplicity was odd. So it's going to look like this. And you could plug in more points if you needed. Then we just need to see what this last section is doing. So if we plug in something like A1, if I put in a 1, I get 2 over 1 times 5, so 2/5. So that's telling me 1 is giving me a positive, so I know that section is above the asymptote. And And so now I have my graph. So you have to put in test points until you find the point on every side of your asymptotes. Are there questions on that? Everybody knows how I'm getting those test points? Let's do one more together. What do I need to do first on this one that I didn't have to on the previous one? We can factor. On the top, take out a 3x, and that leaves us with x minus 1. Bottom would factor into x plus 4x minus 3. So x-intercepts, it's when y equals 0, or really just when the top of the fraction is 0. So if we set those to 0, we get 0 and 1. So we put our x-axis at 0 and 1. Y-intercept, if you put in 0 for all your x's, you can do it in the original or the factors, you'll get the same thing. If I do it in the original, 0 minus 0 is 0, over 0 plus 0 minus 12, 0 divided by negative 12 is 0. So we just have that one. Vertical asymptote, what makes the denominator 0? So if I have 2 vertical asymptotes, how many sections of my graph am I going to get? We'll have 3 different pieces. All right. Horizontal or oblique, it's based off the highest powers of x. So we want that in the one before we factor. It's easier to see here. If you take 3x squared divided by 1x squared, the x squareds cancel, and 3 over 1 is just 3. So it's a number, so this is a horizontal at y equals 3. All right, now we just need to plug in some test points to figure out what this looks like. So if I put in something smaller than -4, so maybe a -5, and you're welcome to use your calculator. You don't really have to show me a lot here, but you need to be plugging these in. So if I put in -5, why don't you guys all help with this? I feel like some of you are just sitting there staring and not really contributing much. So plug in -5. All I really care about is it bigger or smaller than 3? What do you get when you put that in? When you did -5? Like 10 point something, 11 point something, I think. If you don't have a calculator, you should grab one now, because I've asked everybody to participate. Nobody should just be sitting there with their arms crossed watching.
I got 11.25.
I think it's a positive, because we have 4 negatives. So 11.25, that's bigger than 3. So it tells me this section is up here. Okay, this middle section, can we tell what it's doing? Maybe, maybe not, depending on how confident you are. You could plug in some points if you wanted to see. If you put in -1, you have a calculator in your hand, so you should be able to do this. -1. Did you -1/2? Okay. Can it just go flat in between these 2 points? No. So what I know is it's going to come down. So it's going to be getting closer to this vertical. We have to go above, then come back. So again, none of those x-intercepts had a multiplicity of 2. We know the only time it bounces is if your multiplicity is 2. So it's just going to keep going down. If you were unsure about that, plug in more points and see. The last thing we need is something bigger than 3. So maybe a 4, and just to see if it's above or below this horizontal one. So if you put in a 4. So 4.5. So it's above this, so we know that's what it looks like this. All right. We have about 10 minutes left. What I want, you guys have that handout from yesterday. I want you to do the final problem. I'm going to give you a second handout, and I just want you to do problem 1. Monday we'll practice more, and we will finish the second handout and turn in the first one. Okay? So you need to finish the day 2 handout. Hopefully you've already done 1 through 4, so you just have one more problem. I'm going to go ahead and give the next one. Right now you just need to do the first problem, and we will finish Monday.